In this video, we chat about the BMW F850 GS Adventure, the Honda Africa Twin base model, and the new KTM890 Adventure R. Hi, I'm Francois from AdventureBikeTroop.com, where we chat about bike riding, maintenance, travel tips, and more. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this video now. In this video, we're looking at the medium-sized adventure bikes, around $14,000 to $15,000, and we've got three in mind. It's the BMW F850 GS Adventure model, the Honda Africa Twin, the Standard, and the KTM890 Adventure R, and all available in 2021. Now these bikes cost almost exactly the same. If you look at the list here, they're right next to each other, so they are directly comparable. I just have to note here that it's the Standard Africa Twin and the BMW is the GS Adventure model. Those are more or less the same price. Now I have a very strong bias towards Japanese bikes, and this will come through in the video maybe. So for that reason, I ask of you, please, if you like any of the other bikes, or if you own any of these three bikes, please comment below with what you like about the bikes. If there's anything you disagree about, or if you have any questions, please comment below, and let's make this a helpful and useful resource for anyone interested in these bikes. Now in this video, I'm just going to look at the specs, but obviously if you are interested in a new adventure bike, or any bike for that matter, nothing beats getting on the bike and test riding it for yourself. I mean, these are just figures, and on paper the bikes might compare in a certain way, but what really matters is how it feels and how it makes you feel when you're on the bike. So get out there, get on a buddy's bike, or go to a dealership and take the bike for a spin. So if you look at the prices, there's about a $250 difference between the bikes, with the GS Adventure at the top end, and this is the 40th anniversary Adventure, so there's new color scheme. It's an awesome looking bike. And then the Africa Twin for this year, it looks like they swapped around the colors. The Standard model on the US side now has the Honda Racing blue, white and red colors, whereas the Adventure model has the bland simply black or red colors. In the 2020 model range, it was the other way around. So that's nice if you're looking for the Standard model, if that is the case. But as far as the website goes, that is what it seems like. And I had a comment to this effect as well. And then the KTM we're looking at this price is the new 2021 890 Adventure R. So if you want a more comprehensive video on this newly launched bike, it was in November 2020 that it was launched or announced, you can check out the video somewhere here or in the description below. So the 790 Adventure R is still available, but that's at $500 less, and it will most probably be discontinued since they offer both at more or less the same price. So let's start with power. For some reason, power is always the first thing that is quoted, and that's the thing we love to see, is the power figures. And that's also one of the figures that is very difficult to find online. If you look at the manufacturer's websites, it's difficult to find the power figures. And also if you look at magazines and spec sites, it's often inconsistent. So what I found, and I've looked at the different sources, is the Honda is the most powerful at 105 horsepower. Then the KTM is more or less 100 horsepower, depending on where you look. That's 10% more than the 790. So this is the 890 Adventure R. And then the BMW is quoted at 90 horsepower. It's quite a bit less than the other two. Someone, or more than one person, commented on my previous video, linked up here or in the description below, that the BMW actually has 95 horsepower. Now if you look at different BMW sites, BMW Motorrad sites, you'll find 95 horsepower in some cases, but in the US site it's quoted at 90 horsepower. So I've also got the description the link in the description below. So that's 105 for the Africa Twin with that bigger engine. It's almost 200 cc's bigger than the other two. And then the KTM at 100 horsepower, BMW way behind, 90 horsepower. But power figures on paper doesn't mean anything. If you get on the bikes, it's a very different situation, where they deliver the power, how they deliver the power, how they put down the power on the ground, and if you couple that with the suspension. But what I can say is, at this level, at these power figures, there's not much in it. All of these bikes, if you're at highway speeds, it's very easy to pass. I mean, they can all do 200 k's an hour plus. That's 125 miles per hour plus. So way above the speed limit. And then if you play in the dirt with a 500 pound adventure bike, I mean, 100 horsepower is more than enough to get you into trouble and to seriously do some crazy stuff. So more than enough power. But what is more important for me is how these manufacturers have managed to get this power out of these bikes. And there's a big difference between the Honda on the one hand and then the BMW and the KTM on the other. So Honda has a much bigger engine. I mean, it's almost 1100 cc's versus the others that is about 850, 900 cc's. So that's a much bigger engine, only slightly more power. And if you look at the compression ratio, almost 10, I think it's 10.1 to 1 for the Honda, so much lower, so a much less stressed engine to get that power versus BMW and KTM. If I look at the compression figures, I'll put it up on the screen as well. BMW is at 12.7 to 1, and then KTM, the 890 Adventure R, at 13.5 to 1. And all else being equal, that just means the Honda will be more durable and more reliable. And you can see that's why I like the Japanese stuff. The way they deliver the power, it might be a more primitive, but if you squeeze out every ounce of power out of every cc, something has to be compromised. And if you go far out into the unknown on these very modern bikes, I would prefer something that is understressed rather than at the limit of the engineering design. So the next thing we're going to compare is the weight, and this is maybe a bit more real or practical and a more important consideration if you're going to tour these bikes. And this is where the KTM is miles ahead. It's at 464 pounds, so this is weight, so fully fueled. That is more than the 790 Adventure R, so that's about, how much is that? 16 pounds more, but it's a bigger engine, but it's still way less than the Honda at 498 pounds. So the Honda's at least slightly under the 500 pounds. Remember, this is a standard model with a smaller tank. And then the BMW is still very heavy, 538 pounds. Someone mentioned that the newer one will be lighter, but the Adventure model that we're looking at here at this price is still 538 pounds. That's as per the manufacturer's website, 40th edition. So the BMW is definitely a much heavier bike, but it is a very balanced bike. Now, if you look at the power to weight figures, this is where the power delivery and how it feels makes a difference. So the power versus the weight, you'll see the KTM is ahead of all the other two, but only slightly ahead of the Honda. That's 0.23 horsepower per pound versus 0.2 for the Honda, and the BMW, because it's so heavy and underpowered, at 0.17. So the KTM definitely the more dynamic bike in terms of power to weight ratio. And just to put that in perspective, the KTM890 Adventure R versus the BMW at the same price, same engine size more or less, is a 35% more power to weight. And that's quite a lot. So it just gives you an idea of the sportiness of the KTM versus the BMW. And now another real life consideration. I mean, these are adventure bikes, and if you are going to tour with this bike, fuel tank size is a big consideration. And let's be honest, we're not going to put some cheap plastic tank like an Acerbis or a Acerbis, I don't know how you pronounce it, or IMS tank on a BMW or a KTM, a 15,000 pound bike. So if it has a big tank as standard, it's nice. And also carrying fuel on an adventure bike, there's the extra danger, the inconvenience, it could spill, fire dangers, etc. So if you get a big tank as standard, it's a big help. Now, because we're looking at the Adventure model here for the BMW, that is the one with the bigger tank, so that's 6.1 gallons. That's a full gallon more than the Africa Twin, the standard Africa Twin. Now, you can get a bigger tank on the Africa Twin Adventure Sports, the ES model, that's 6.5 gallons, so 1.5 gallons more, but that's almost $3,000 extra. So at this price, the BMW wins, and then the KTM slightly behind at 5.3 gallons, and the Africa Twin 5 gallons. It would have been nice if the Africa Twin had the big tank on the base model as well, but it doesn't. So that's the tank size. Next, so now we're looking at off-road ability. So obviously you have to ride the bike yourself to make any comment on the ability off-road, and it's also going to depend on the rider for the most part. But the ground clearance, something that BMW doesn't quote, so I can't show that. But we have suspension travel. And if you look at the list of all, I think it's 15 or 16 bikes, there's also a link to the article on all the adventure bikes. Then you'll see it's in the top half. So these three are all more off-road biased. The KTM, it's no surprise that it has the longest travel suspension at almost 240 millimeters front and rear. And then the Honda Africa Twin is slightly behind, and the BMW almost level with the Honda. So there's almost nothing in it. They're all long travel suspension. They all have a lot of ground clearance. So these bikes are very capable off-road, even though they are very heavy. So that is the specs comparisons. So if we look at features, it's very difficult again. I mean, all of these bikes have a very long list of features. So I'm just going to mention one or two for each of these bikes. So the first one, let's start with the KTM890 Adventure R. Something they mentioned there is that it has now a cruise control button as standard on the handlebars, but it still doesn't have cruise control. So you still have to buy that as an optional extra. It still has that dialable traction control, so that is an awesome feature. I think it's from 0 to 9. You can dial in the traction control exactly as you like it for the amount of skid or amount of rear wheel slip that you want. So that's a very neat feature that the other bikes don't have. Then the Honda Africa Twin has cruise control as standard. Only bike, and this is the base model, not even the Adventure Sport ES model, has traction control. So that's nice. It's a pity that the other two bikes does not have this as standard. The BMW has it as an option, but only if you buy the premium package, which is $2,150 extra. There's a whole long list of optional extras on the BMW, but some standard features as well, which you can go and check out again at the link below or on BMW's website. One thing that the BMW does have is what? Oh, if you do look at the BMW press release, so for the 40th edition, there's a whole long list of additional or optional features that you get. But the main thing that they mention in the press release section for the 850 Adventure, the GS Adventure model, is the color schemes. I mean, really, that is the biggest difference from the previous model. So it's a pity that you have to pay that much extra, and that's why it is a bit misleading if you look at the prices at the same. So you really should be able to, or you should compare a fully spec'd 850 GS Adventure with the Honda Africa Twin Adventure Sports ES model. And then there are more comparable bikes. And then on the Honda you get tubeless spoked rims, which is awesome. Thanks again for joining, and if you have any comments or any additional information on any of these bikes, anything you disagree with, or if you own these bikes and want to share your experience and about the reliability and the cost of ownership, please comment below. Let's make this a useful resource for the watchers out there. And please subscribe to this channel, give it a thumbs up and share it, and hit that bell button thing to get notifications in future. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.